Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, I'm excited for this episode. Before I introduce you to our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven.
Matthew 5, 14, 15, and 16, bro.
Wow. Our guest today, not only a steward of the culture, leader in automotive, friend of the Culture Matters podcast, um, blessing to my life and my family. I'm so excited for Chris Vester to come back on the Culture Matters podcast. Hey, I picked that quote for a bunch of reasons. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it today. Going to learn about the automotive culture, among other things. Yeah, what you knew that one, huh?
I did. That's my verse of life.
Holy
And you didn't,
cow.
and you didn't know that.
Holy, seriously?
Yeah. So if you read that verse, you know how I introduce myself as a man, a bold man who acts with integrity and from love, and I stand as a beacon pointing to God's grace and mercy. If you read those verses, it fills that blank really well. It's about shining your grace, shining your light to God and doing and how you do things. It's definitely the verse I strive to live my life by. So yes, I do know that verse very, very well.
I picked that because when I'm thinking about automotive, that's what came to my mind. Like you, your family. Because when I was trying, like I was reading, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in me.
Yes.
Like I think of, so wow, okay, good way to kick it off.
Wow, that is a good way. Yeah, like you had no idea of that. Like that's not
No,
anything
no,
we've
no,
ever discussed
clearly.
in all of our years. We've never even talked about that.
Um, I think it's so my question is, what is automotive culture?
Um, I think if I could sum it up in a word, it would be evolving. Um, because traditional automotive culture is what's been portrayed in like everything else in media and movies and TV. And me think about movies like Cadillac Man and used cars and um, Fargo was about the car business. Which not even a lot of people even remember that. That's about the car business, but it's this idea that the people that are here to serve you in this space are here to just take advantage of you in any way possible. I think there's been a shift in that. I think there's a lot more people that have gained voice in this space um, that love people and want to be a guide more than anything. I mean, is there a price to be paid when you gain the service of somebody? Yeah. Um, but it's not about, gouging somebody. Um, in the past 2 years with inventory shortages and things like that, that didn't help the space at all. Because I think people from the outside looking in saw it as price gouging or taking advantage of situation. But opportunities became so limited in the space. I mean, it's still about the families that work in this business as well as it is anybody else's family. So it's like they had to, because if opportunities are limited, you got to make sure that every opportunity feeds you the way you can. But I do believe there is some shift coming. I mean, I believe there's still, I'd say, still a majority that are stuck in that it's all about me
Mm.
syndrome. Um, and it's about the immediate and not the long term. I think there's a lot of that. It's less about relationship and more about transaction. But as transactions get easier to occur, like mean, we're not to the point of complete automation yet, but like, eventually we'll get there. Well, if the transaction gets that easy, then what would be the advantage of even having a salesperson? Which is where the idea of building long-term relationships with people matters. I know that's a really long answer to say it's evolving, but I think it is. I think it's a slow evolution. I mean, there are people in this space that I'm super encouraged by. Like there's a gentleman named Paul Daly, and he actually um, has a podcast called the Automotive State of the Union, and they do these series of where they go to dealerships and says love people more than cars.
Wow.
Um, and he highlights a lot of great organizations. So I know there's organizations out there that have good culture, that have the idea that they're there to serve the community and serve the people, and then the people in the community know that that's what that dealership is about. Um, but it is still, I think, a rarity, um, for sure, for it to be that way.
What do you think some of the elements of the car culture that could have led to that consumer brand where the consumer might be on the defense going into the purchase or investment into a vehicle for themselves? Like how do those stigmas come into being? What were some of the ways of doing business back in the day? And
Yes.
or I don't, for
Yeah.
the lay person listening that doesn't know much about automotive
Yeah. So the idea of window
history.
stickers, even the Moroni label, didn't happen until the 80s. Um, so it was basically you drove up to a car lot and they could tell you the price was whatever the price was. So and it's, as sad as it is, stereotypes are based in reality to some degree. There's always a percentage of reality in there that just gets blown up like a caricature.
Sure.
So I think that in the late 70s, early 80s, it just got to be gross because there was no real regulation about it. And I'm not about government regulations at all, but I think to a degree, where the customer did win was when a manufacturer could say, "Hey, based on what we've done and what we've built here, this is what we think it's probably worth on the retail market." Um, so then at that point, you had window stickers.
Hmm.
But prior to that, you didn't have that. I mean, like you walked up and there was no identification on the car that it was for sale except the sign that said for sale. There was not there was no window sticker. Um, and and when that happened, I think the dealership backlash of that was, okay, well, if they're going to make us cap what we can ask, then we'll just try to steal the trades if they have a trade. Like they looked for other ways to take advantage. So then you get in this situation where, okay, well, if I'm going to go and like they're going to try to steal my trade, like there's all these things that people have been told over the course of time that at some point in the automotive history were true. Um, the great thing about now is there's such an abundance of information that a customer could really educate themselves well and come in and make a buying decision that they could feel good about and that could be a profitable situation for the dealership. I just think that the idea of profitable for the dealership has to be clearly communicated. I mean, it's just like, what does that even mean? But I think, yes, to answer that question, Jay, it's about in the early days, it was the wild, wild west where you could charge whatever you wanted. Like it could be a Chevrolet truck, Silverado, back in, I'd say Cheyenne, way back in the day, 70s. And you could go to one Chevrolet dealership and go to the next town over, and they may tell you, $2,000 difference in price because there was no sticker. Like they knew what they had paid for it. There was an invoice that was associated with it.
Hmm.
But what they were able to say to the customer was the price was completely up to the dealership.
Is there some level of like when one's running a dealership, some cars could come, let's say I have like 50 cars, I could lose 40 on I can lose money on 40, but I might try to make it up on 10. I just trying to understand the dynamic, like how could that kind of occur? You know what I'm saying? A small business owner,
Yes.
could that type of like happenstance occur? Um, yeah, I'm just
Yeah. So like working on the averages, like
yeah.
as just working out and say, hey, if I have to sell it for this, I can, because the next guy might be able to make up the difference. And I think that's where people don't want to feel like they're
Like there's
making
so
up.
much freedom.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm the customer, then why did somebody else? Why was somebody else able to buy it for less than me? You know, um, and dealerships create that. It'd be real easy for us not to do that if customers agreed to pay what the manufacturer suggested and dealerships agreed to not discount. Like that's I mean
Okay.
that's an easy solution. I think there's some laws against that. um but the joyful thing about that is it really, at that point, the competition is less about price and more about experience. um and I think
Mm.
when you dial it into how do you build that, how can someone build relationship and create a better experience, then it becomes less about the transaction in the moment and about more about the you know the relationship over the lifetime of the customer.
How much are cars a part of our identity as a
Oh
people?
my, oh my goodness. Well, I personally bought a Corvette Z06 almost a year ago. What does that say about my identity? Like it really, that's a scary thought to even think about. I think, um, for a vast majority of the population, they truly are
Hmm.
identified with their car. I mean, I think, again, there's a lot of I thinks in here, but when someone comes, I'm going to use the Chevy Silverado as an example. The average Chevy Silverado buyer spends between $3,000 and $5,000 accessorizing that truck once they leave the dealership. And they do that in a way to personalize the vehicle to them. So it truly becomes an extension of their personality. They want people to look at that truck and identify who's in it just because of the way they accessorize it. So it's definitely an extension of their personality. Um, Now, does that mean that every mom that drives a minivan identifies as the? I don't think so. I think sometimes it's just pure practicality. I got to have it. There's a utilitarian purpose to the car. Um, Suzanne's, one of her favorite vehicles to drive when they made it was the Honda Element. It looked like a shoebox with wheels. It's one of the ugliest vehicles ever made. And she said, it is not pretty to look at, but it is the most practical vehicle and it fits my needs better than anything I've ever driven.
Sounds like her.
Sounds like her, right? And so, it
Oh, it's
wasn't
so
about
cool.
it wasn't about identifying with the car. It's about, hey, this is the vehicle that serves my needs the best. So I think there's a percentage of population that's what they need it for, you know. But I think the vast majority make very emotional decisions based on how they see themselves, which means how other people will see them in that particular vehicle.
How hard is it for someone listening to, um, like, how hard is it really to experience the selection, the um, the venturing out to meet with a dealership, the car buying experience? How hard is it really?
Not as hard as it was. The average, the customers visit, the number got down to 1.2 dealerships in 2022 because of multiple reasons. A big part of that was inventory. But it's still not up over two. But it's because they're spending roughly 19 hours, between 19 and 20 hours investigating and studying cars prior to ever even sending in a lead to a dealership, calling a dealership, or coming to a dealership. So they're doing a ton of background work prior. which I prefer a customer that's that way, because it's easier to have a conversation with someone who's educated themselves that well about the process. But it's an intimidating thing. I mean, you're getting ready to make probably the second or third largest purchase of your life. And you're walking into a scenario where you've been told your whole life this guy's out to assassinate you. And he doesn't care about you and only cares about what's in your pocketbook. So go in with guns ablazing, boxing gloves on, or even bare knuckled, to protect yourself in the situation. So I think it's, from the customer's point of view, it could be ridiculously difficult.
Have you found that there are people that actually come to experience and at first are in a defense?
Oh, for sure. I mean, over 90% of them come in that way.
Really?
Oh, for sure.
And it's always been that way.
As long as I've been in the business.
Does that create how
Well,
do the people feel? Yeah.
let me rephrase that one. I think it's over 90% of the first time people, visitors. In other
Yeah, I
words,
followed that. Yeah, but could
okay,
you
okay.
clarify it?
Yeah.
What type of toll do you think that puts on the people that work at dealerships?
Oh, it's, huh, it's not just sales people. It's the people that are coming in for service, because they've been told, hey, when you go to the service department, they're going to try to sell you a bunch of things you don't need. So it's like they really believe that everybody is in this building is here to take advantage of them. I think it could take a large toll on the employees, because they feel like they're being branded with something that they don't own. They're being branded with an identity that they didn't get a chance to create. They've stepped into this business and stepped into an identity that's not theirs. So I think that's a heavy burden to carry. But I tell the guys all the time, we know that's who they are coming in, but it's how we shine our light. Going back to that verse, it's how we shine our light that gives them a different experience and lets them know that, oh, it is different there. They do want to be a guide. They do want to help us make a good buying decision. They're not going to recommend services that don't need to be done, because they care about us coming back. I'm way more concerned about a lifetime customer than I am a one and done.
Why is that?
I mean, it takes the pressure off the salespeople. I mean, that second time, third time, fourth time, 20th time they come back and buy a car for them or their family member or a cousin, or that experience, like you just said, it for both people is a much better experience. It's a better experience for the customer, because like they know they've already got a relationship with that person, and that salesperson or service person knows they have a relationship with these people, and they don't see them with this assumed identity. They see them for who they are. So if those relationships can be built over the course of time, then I mean, the work environment changes, the understanding of who we are changes, everything changes.
I got a quote for you.
Okay.
I wish I remembered it but I'll just have to read it. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Here's where this came up right now.
Okay.
90% of I'm there. I got bells on. I just graduated car sales school. I'm ready to sell these cars. I've been dreaming about cars since I was a kid with the pictures on my wall. I'm gonna help people transport from point A. You get the picture, okay?
Yeah.
And it's my first day, so I'm on bells on in the morning. By 8 p.m. at night, I saw 10 customers. You're telling us 9 of them may have come in potentially in a defensive posture.
Yes.
So the question that comes to my mind is, who do I have to be with bells on by 8 p.m. at night? Like, what type of person do I have to be? And that's that quote came because it was this morning I did a podcast, and that was the quote that randomly was picked. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I'm thinking, like, I'd have to be saying that with my Hail Marys at night.
Right.
Because, like, what if a week goes by and it's 9 out of 10 come in a defense? The reason I'm thinking the defensive posture.
Right.
If I end up on the defense, I might lose who I am in the process, or lose the best of me. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
That's what comes to mind here.
Yeah. We actually discussed that in our training is, like, there's a quote that says two cowards can't do business. And I'm not calling customers cowards. I'm just saying that, cowards get defensive quickly. And like, if you can just understand that it takes a forgiving nature and understanding and empathizing with where the customer is coming from, and just constantly loving them into the relationship. I mean, we openly talk about that all the time, because, there are customers that come in defensive and stay defensive and leave defensive, like they don't buy, because they just never buy into the idea that it could be different. Well, that's not our fault. If as long as we've done all we can to show them that we are here to give them an incredible dealership experience, and it's, how can we enrich your life today? And we just have to keep being true to who we are. I mean, that's obviously a quote from Christ for those that are persecuting them, and they don't even know, legitimately have no idea of, or don't believe him, so they don't know what they're doing. And but he didn't change how he showed up. He's literally asking forgiveness for those that are crucifying him. So you've got to put that face on every day.
Some of the ways that, yeah. So that brings me, what would you say is the HVA culture then?
Yeah, I'm going to use the same word, evolving, because we started our strategic planning, and we had our core values, not our core values, but our core value speech, where we give the inception of our mission statement, values, to new employees, to give them where they came from. We started that journey in June of 2017, where we took that step back and said, okay, well, who are we right now? And where do we want to go to, and who do we want to be? And, we've been working on that. June will be 7 years. And I think that in June of 17, we were nowhere near a company whose purpose statement was to enrich every life we touch, to give an incredible dealership experience. Like, that just is not who we were. And to have team members who had a passion to serve and encouraged teamwork and promoted positivity and adapted for growth and were relentless in their duties, like, that's not who we were. Now, we have people on the team that did that. That's just who they were. But that's not who the company was. And I think that over the last 7 years, through lots of discussion and training and evolution, that we're becoming more of that. The one step beyond that is, I've said, if I could, create a leadership development company that's disguised as a car dealership, that would be a plus for me on top of that other mission, because I think people who can lead themselves well understand that life is about relationship. And I think that creates an even better experience for the customer and for their people in their immediate circle of influence. So I think that, yeah, we're evolving. I feel like we're probably steps ahead of the industry as a whole. Just in what I see in popular culture. I mean, the companies that are out there talking about love people more than cars, and Um, like that's a small voice, and then you got guys that are, pulling people on stage and embarrassing them as a way to help them build quote unquote self confidence. Um, I think there's still a lot of negative reinforced culture out there to do battle with, but I think for sure we are steps ahead, just in how we treat our employee base, how we treat our customer base. I mean, we love people. We love our community. We love the kids in our neighborhood. Like we are constantly trying to figure out ways to serve them, not because we're trying to sell them something, but we're inviting them to our dealerships to have trick or treat, giving away backpacks. And it's not because of the publicity that goes along with it. We just really feel like the community has a need and we want to help fill it.
Hmm.
Um, so I think, I yeah, I would say we're evolving. Um, I think one of the tougher things for people to learn in that process is we can have that sense of love and culture of loving people and serving people, but it doesn't change the fact that there's still work to be done every day. You know, it's not about coming to work and standing around a campfire singing kumbaya. It's if we're going to really serve the community, then we need to show up in the community. And that means like we need to be taxpayers as well. So you become a taxpayer by earning income. That's, I mean, and it's a blurry line maybe, but we need to embrace that it's still business. There's still achievements to be made. There's still work to be done.
What were those uh, sentiments that you shared, like adapt for growth, relentless, and there? Can you go through each one?
The value system for us is first is passion to serve. We really do. I mean, we talk about what sets us apart. The three things that sets us apart is SET. We serve with our feet and hands. Education for the customer and the employee, because we know that a more educated employee that can educate the customer leads to a better experience. And then time. We know that time is the most valuable asset, so we try to value the customer's time more than everyone else. But it starts with service. How can we serve each other, and how can we serve the customer base? And then how can we serve our community with our feet and hands? Like there's a true passion to serve. Promotion of positivity is the second one. It just really means staying out of the negative mindset. Because you spoke on it, Jay. If 9 out of 10 times you're engaging with a customer and they're coming in with bare knuckle or a knife behind them, just ready to chop your head off, like it'd be real easy to develop a negative attitude about things. But we can control our attitude. So how can we be positive, stay positive, and promote positivity? The encouragement of teamwork. I think that's probably one of the things that through the company we have seen evolved at the highest level. Second only probably to the service part of one another. Right now in our organization, if we've got a dealership that has a struggle in an area, regardless of what department they're working in, if it's a service struggle, then they'll call the service department at a different dealership and say, "Hey, this is my struggle. What do you think?" Like there's a lot of what do you think's happening, those conversations. And the sales team really does want to work with one another. I mean, we just even started considering having what's called split deals where a customer comes in speaking to one customer and they can't, for whatever reason, finish the transaction. They come back on a different day and that original salesperson's not there. Traditionally, we've always said, hey, that original salesperson, he gets credit for all of it. And salespeople were okay with it because they knew when it was their time and their turn that it always would come back around. So just recently we even considered not doing that. And so that's still up for debate. Um, the adapting for growth, like the car business is ever evolving. I mean, you just look at even just the past 3 years where we went through a shortage of cars and people not being able to get out of their house and having to wear masks and like all this stuff that happened in 2020 through 2023. Um, there was a lot of adaptation to take place there. And now it's about, okay, now that things are getting back to what they were in 2019, how are we going to grow from what we learned in the last 3 years to be better for the customer? So we expect our team members to have like this adapt for what's coming, adapt to how we're growing. And then relentless. And that was the hardest one for us because it can have such a really negative connotation, because when you hear the word relentless, a lot of times it's used negatively. But what it really means is whatever the task is at hand for the day, we're going to get it done better than yesterday. And we have, I always use this one particular example. There's a lady, we call her Miss Susan. She's been with us almost 20 years. She was last year's core value champion for the year. And she always talks like there's a baby in the room. She's super quiet. She's real demure, but there's no one I can think of that exemplifies relentlessness more than her. Like if there's something for her to get done today, she's going to get it done. And she's not going to run over anybody to get it done, but she's going to take ownership of the task and make sure it happens. So yeah, those are our five.
What order are they in? Or is there an order? Or could there be? Or yeah, is there one? Sorry.
Yeah, we don't order them. I don't think there's one that's more important than the other. But I have done the experiment when we did book club one Saturday. I asked everybody individually to rank them as how they saw them in importance. And that was a really interesting experiment, because not only did it showed that, hey, whether we rank them or not, we rank them.
Wow.
In our own mind. And then being able to take the people that were in that room and say, okay, well, why do you see that one as number one? And have that conversation around it. It just muddied the waters, because then people got to hear someone say, well, this is why I think, passion serve matters the most. And then, okay, well, this is why I think relentless matters the most. And I mean, it was almost, I think I think there's just a lot of shifting of mindset. And I think one of the shifts that happen is, can we really rank them? Or like Tim Grover says about the Relentless 13, they're just all number one. Because if you miss any one of them, you've just really missed it. But it was fun. It was fun watching that conversation. I mean, there's like 18 people at book club that morning, I think. So it was really, really fun. Really fun.
What's book club?
So the leadership team, every single month, we pick a book to read. That's it could be any number of things that it's about. And we collectively read it, and then we get together one Saturday morning, have breakfast, and just discuss the book. I mean, there could be 6 people there. It could be 18 people there. We only do it. I put the book out there for everybody to know what the leadership team is reading collectively, just in case they want to. And there is an open invitation to come, but not really with an expectation of them to come. It's just always super fun to see other people jump in, because we've had that. I mean, we've had probably a 50-50 mix of leadership team members and other people in the organization, salespeople, service ASMs.
What would you say is the value of that?
I think the discussion is the value, because when that many people read the same book, they all read a different book, because they're reading it through their lens of life. And for them to be able to sit and collectively talk about the takeaways that they had, those takeaways are always through their lens of life. And I think it gives everybody an appreciation for the people that are there having the conversation about seeing life through their lens. And and it just opens up dialogue, and it gets to people start to get to know one another. It's and also the books usually, speak to a development of culture or performance or customer experience, or things that that can drive the vision or the experience to a higher level. And I think the more we're on the same page with those things, the great thing is they're open to say, yeah, that one sucked. Like we had one that we read, I want to say it was in November, and I knew it would be. I don't want to name the book on here because it was a difficult read. It read more like a textbook, and I kind of knew that going in that it was going to read like a textbook. And then to hear them all open up about, yeah, this was hard, this was tough, this was harder to read, but it didn't keep them from reading it. It didn't keep them from getting takeaways. So, sometimes those things that suck, that feel super technical, there's still value. Not everybody's. I mean, it was simple as one of the books I assigned, or I say I assigned, one of the books I suggested, because it's not always my book, was Sam I Am, Green Eggs and Ham. And it was like, why are you assigning us a Dr. Seuss book? I mean, it's 35 pages long. Well, Sam I Am is the best salesperson ever.
Why?
Because he was relentless on asking for the close. Like he overcame every objection, We'll not eat them in a house. We'll not eat them with a mouse. Like everything that came at him, he just kept coming back. What about this? What about this? What about this? And finally, there's some green eggs and ham eating. It's a fun sales analogy, and it opened up an hour's worth of discussion. We talked about that book longer than it takes to read it.
Wow.
So, yeah, when I've been invited to go on read Dr. Seuss Day to read elementary school kids, that's always the book I take. Maybe I'll find a first grader that's going to be a salesperson one day.
What would you say are some of the most important elements of culture in a dealership?
Elements of culture. Elements of our culture, or
like a successful dealership
I think
culture?
what I've seen here is when people begin to understand that it's not my culture or my father's culture to protect, that it's their culture. If they align with it, it's their culture to protect. And they understand that they have the freedom to help align people with it, with adjustment conversations, or I don't want to call them corrective conversations, because I think sometimes it's just a matter of you don't even realize that you're being a violation of culture until someone tells you. I think when they start to understand that, and they start to use that skill set or that tool, I think that's where we've seen the biggest spread of culture, where we've seen it catch fire the most, is when people begin to understand, oh, it is my responsibility to call that out in the moment. I mean, one of the most encouraging things that I've had happen to me in, I'd say, the last 60 days when it comes to culture, if I could point to one thing, and I'm thinking about this because he just walked by the window. He brought it back to my mind. Is I had a salesperson that said, "Hey, can I borrow you for a minute?" I'm like, "Sure." And we walked outside, and he said, "I know when you come in the room that you've got important things that you need the guys to do. Can you do me a favor and take the temperature of the room before you start having those conversations?" And I was like, hallelujah. Yeah. And I hugged his neck. I'm like, so thankful for you to say that to me,
Wow.
because he, like, he wants to be successful. And he's right. When I'm in those moments, I'm having those conversations, it's what's on my brain right that minute to lead to success. But in that minute, I might be stepping on the toes of someone trying to sell a car. And I should just back off for just 45 seconds and let that happen. Um, and so they had a really massive shift in their productivity in 30 days. Not because of that, but because of things they had been doing, the work they had been doing over the last 90 days. It's just starting to really start to pay some dividends. And I went in and congratulated them on a good month. And he jokingly said, well, it's because you read the room. Right. And,
Wow.
and then I was like, you're right. You're 100% right. I'm just going to get out of the way. So, but to have someone that's on the accountability chart, not directly under me, but felt free enough to say, hey man, sometimes you screw it up too. Which was awesome. Like, it was, man, it's one of the best things that's happened to me. I was
Yeah.
so
Wow.
appreciative. Because he told the truth. I mean, he helped me recognize the blind spot. And because of that one, I mean, it was better before he said it than it had been 5 years ago. But I think he just turned it up. He turned up the heat a lot, you know. So it was fun. It was good.
Um, yeah, in closing, if you were to summarize where things are going, how would you articulate that for our audience, right? What can they expect from HVAG in the coming years?
Yeah. An even higher level of relationship building. One of the where we spend the majority of our time coaching our people is that every opportunity is an opportunity to begin a relationship. Because they really do want relationships with their customers. They want to know what's going on in their life. They want to know how the kid's doing. They want to know, hey, did Johnny get on Little League baseball team? Like, they really care about every single customer they come in contact with. And I feel like that it's becoming obvious to those that do business with us. The feedback I'm getting, either through messages on social media or emails I get, or the things that people put on our review systems. I mean, there's always going to be someone who's not happy with the results they were expecting. Um, that's always going to be true, and sometimes that has nothing to do with us. It's just their level of expectation. But the overwhelming comment that I hear is, it really is different, and they really do care, and that's the overwhelming thing. So I just want to pour gasoline on that. I really do. However, we can turn up the heat with that feeling when they drive on a lot, so that they don't have to come in with their boxing.
You're listening to this episode, please share this with a friend who's looking to buy a car,
They're looking for a job in the business.
looking to be mentored and evolve in a growing culture. Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast. Follow Chris, and we'll see you next time. The Culture Matters podcast.